Definition: a composer of songs.
Hello and welcome to Songsmith. Today we are talking to singer-songwriter Boo Hewerdine. Boo is an English singer-songwriter and record producer. His work includes lead singer and creative force behind the seminal band The Bible, as well as solo recordings and work for film.
He has also produced records by several artists, including a long association with Eddi Reader. In a career spanning over 30 years, Boo is considered one of the UK's finest singer-songwriters and has become something of a national treasure. In the last number of years, Boo has been producing and collaborating with many young artists. He continues to take musical risks and delves into his own life for inspiration.
Boo's relatable and poignant lyrics about life and the world around him resonate with his fans, and we know you're going to enjoy this interview.
Tuesdays and forgetfulness and a little money saved. Does she know? I don't know. But from here I can tell it would try the patience of angels. It would try the patience of angels.
Hi, Boo, and welcome to Songsmith. Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Eva. Lovely to be here.
I had read that you worked in a record store, and when you were younger, and I just wonder, was it a conscious choice that you wanted to work in a record store because you loved music, or was it, something that you found yourself in this job and exposed to lots of different music, and how did that influence you?
Oh, I really wanted to work in a record shop. Before then, I'd worked in a shoe shop. I'd worked in a photo retouching factory. Working in a record shop, it was the coolest record shop in Cambridge. It's called The Beat Goes On. It's where all the cool people hung out. I'd gone there when I was younger to get my singles signed by the Jam, who came in to do a signing. So I was like, wow, one day I'll come and work there. And I did. And then I worked there, and we all got all the imports and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, you always got exposed to loads of music. And then I worked in the warehouse, which was kind of even better because you could just listen to whatever you liked while you were sort of doing your warehouse stuff.
As a songwriter, that must be an amazing resource to have.
Loads of ideas I could steal. Just might put them in my little notebook. No, it's just nice. What you realise when you work in a record shop or you work in the warehouse, whatever it is, what makes you ears prick up, it's got nothing to do with style. It's just to do with talent almost. So I stopped listening to genres. I just started listening to good stuff. So it might be a good reggae record or a good soul record or a good rock record. It didn't really matter. You were just that became more important, sort of checking out talent or people who've got things to say rather than being genre-led, which a lot of people, when I was growing up, you were in one tribe or another, so.
But you kind of had to be really for all the necessity because, records were expensive and...
Not for me, I got a discount.
But for the average person, if you bought a record, it was an investment, it was a lot of money back then and there was no internet and there was very little way of exploring other music.
Yeah, I was lucky I got to hear everything if I wanted. And that was great. And the way you heard about records was a sort of word of mouth thing as well. Like there were quite a few shops in the chain and we would say, oh, have you heard the news so or that import or that thing, and it was exciting. And it was really good fun going into record shops and sort of finding something that you've been looking for ages. It's brilliant now. You can just press the button and it arrives at your house. But there were a few records that it took me ages to find, and there was a thrill of the chase and stuff like that.
You must have an amazing collection. So have you been?
I haven't anymore because I don't know. I'm not. I did. I had a massive record collection, but I decided not to drag it with me for one move because I'm not really like that. But I've got friends who've got like a whole room full of records, but I can listen to anything anywhere now because of streaming and stuff. So I'm my own worst enemy.
Is there anything in particular you discovered, that you might have picked up otherwise, like say music from the 50s or?
I always did. I've always enjoyed going back and, right back. It'd be like point zero for anyone who worked in the record shop was the Robert Johnson albums, Volume 1 and Volume 2, old blues records. And of course, all of that's really fascinating. But the thing I think I really took from it was I was really drawn to the indie records as they were then, because indie actually meant they were independent. And I just was drawn to that. So later on, when Eddi was on Rough Trade, that was really thrilling to me, even though I was on some major labels as well along the way. Being on Rough Trade was that felt really sweet after shifting boxes of their records about when I was younger.
You mentioned Eddi Reader, and how did that start? How did you start working with Eddi?
Well, that started in Wimwell Lane in Dublin because I accidentally was asked to be part of a record by a woman who's left us now, a really lovely woman from Texas called Laurie Freelove, that was being produced by Kevin Maloney, who produced Fairground Attraction. And while we were working on it, Eddi's band split up and she had no work really. And so Kevin suggested she come over and sing backing vocals on Laurie's record, which she did. And it's called Smells Like Truth, that record. And it's no one's ever heard it, but it was kind of quite a bit ahead of its time. She was really fantastic, Laurie. And we just started chatting and ended up staying up all night, making up songs and stuff like that. So it's been ever since then.
Yeah.
Initially, when my band split up, she basically took my band, and that was her first band. They were the McCall brothers, Neil and Callum McCall, were her first band. And then I carried on writing with her, and I didn't start playing with her until after the album called Eddi Reader, which was the one that won the Brits and all that stuff. But I wrote about half of that one. That was really exciting because she went to America to make the record, and she's in America with all these incredible musicians, like people in Steely Dan and stuff like that. And the guy she went out with, they sort of fell out. So he left, and so she's got this band, but no songs. And she remembered some songs she'd heard me play when I was on a TV program of hers called No Stilettos on the Dance Floor that was filmed in Glasgow. And so she asked me to sing the song Patience of Angels, which she'd heard me play, down the phone to LA very early in the morning. And then 4 days later, she played it back to me down the phone. And then she said, "Have you got any more?" And I ended up doing that 5 times, I think.
It's such a fantastic song, Patience of Angels. I've been watching the YouTube video as well. I love Eddi Reader on the Bus. And it's just a beautiful song. And you were nominated for an Ivor Novello for that.
I was. I only got my certificate, which I'd lost for 20 years. I only found it yesterday. In fact, I just put it on the wall next to one of my guitars.
What's it like getting nominated for an Ivor Novello?
That's very good. But the thing that's a bit strange is that they told me that I had won. Oh. So that's what they do. They tell you before you've won. And in fact, it was printed in the Evening Standard that I'd won for the best song. And then they changed their mind backstage and gave it to Celine Dion. Oh. And then they asked me to be a judge for the following year. And that was a bit embarrassing because they went, Oh, sorry.
So they literally told you won and changed.
They changed it. Yeah, they said, and the winner is. And I was with my daughter, was very young at the time, and they said the winner is. And I was sort of getting out of my seat because everyone told me, and they said someone else's name. And my daughter looked at me and went, "Oh, Dad," and that was the worst bit. Oh.
You should have won.
You
should have won. It should have been me.
Should have been you.
But I've got I've got the certificate on the wall, so that's all right.
Does winning that make much of a difference in terms of, I mean, does that open a lot of doors for?
Well, it might have done. I've kind of bumbled along, so it's just a funny story, really, now. That's all it. And it was even like on the day after, and there were lots of people around me and being outraged on my behalf. I just thought it was quite funny. So,
Do you know the one that won? What song it was?
it was Think Twice by Celine Dion.
Oh, okay. That is a pretty good song, though.
Yeah, I knew you'd side with her. I knew that.
Yeah. No, Pete. Yeah. No.
But it's not as
Yeah,
good. It's not as good as yours.
He was on my side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
100%.
Think twice. What's that even mean?
That's when I first discovered you. Actually, was on that album. I had Eddi Reader's first album, and to be honest, I was a big fan of Marky Nevin's writing.
He's brilliant, Mark. He's absolutely brilliant. We still play some of his songs in the set.
Yeah, but what I remember about getting that album is hearing some Mark's songs
great
on the
songs.
album. But then I heard Patience of Angels, which was the standout track. And initially, I probably would have presumed it was a Marky Nevin song when I saw the credits. And I saw your name, I was like, there's a new guy in town, you know? And it was a fantastic transition, really, to go from... Mark is a brilliant songwriter.
He's brilliant, and we're all really good friends. He's a lovely man. It's just things change, don't they? It's the biggest musical adventure of my life meeting her, because it's been 30 years now of just wonderful little adventures, you know. So,
can I ask, in terms of when you write a song, and Eddi Reader is probably one of the best singers of all time, of our generation.
she is.
She's incredible.
She is.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. She's incredible singer.
Yeah. I could write any old rubbish and she'd make it sound great. No, she's very selective. She's very selective. And her husband, John, who you know, John Douglas, is a fantastic songwriter. And she's a great songwriter as well. So it's like, it's always, I think, obviously the performance with her is paramount. She's just while you were coming online, Eva, she's starting her run in the West End tonight. She's in a musical of Brokeback Mountain, which has been built completely round her by the guys who wrote Jamie, which was the huge hit last year. So really exciting times.
Oh, that's the guy from The Feeling, isn't it? Cells.
That's right. It is.
I love The Feeling.
Yeah. While you were coming on, I was sending a message saying, wishing her good luck.
Brilliant.
She is obviously a fantastic performer. But I think one of the reasons it's so exciting and fresh still is that she's an amazing, she really wants to have fantastic material all the time, you know, whether from me, her, John, or other sources. And I think that sets her apart, because there's always new material coming through of hopefully a really high standard, you know.
I wonder, when you're writing songs, actually, Boo, you know, are you writing them for yourself with other people in mind, or is there a different approach if you're writing for other people, yourself? Or even I had read that you were doing like the soundtrack at one point for Fever Pitch.
The Fever Pitch and 24/7 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's all different. When I'm writing for myself, that's the hardest. And I've only just started feeling, since that last record, the sort of stirrings again. It sort of goes away for me, but I can write with other people. I write a lot. So especially during lockdown, I made loads of new sort of writing partners. I've got a really lovely guy called Vladan Nosal, who's a young guy. He's only just 30, in Bratislava. And we write all together all the time. That album's finished. We're just about to start putting stuff out. I've written an album with a woman called Zan Tyler. I've written an album with a woman called Lady Nade. I just love to write. If I'm writing with other people or for other people, it comes really easily to me. But when I'm writing for myself, I find it very, very difficult. Funnily enough, I was telling Ken about how I go into prisons and work with prisoners, and I wrote something today, which that's one of the first ones of recently. I went, I think this is a keeper. So you never know when they're going to come from, but it's writing for yourself is such a strange thing. I've always found it harder. Writing with or for other people comes really easily to me.
How does that happen in terms of Like you mentioned some few people there that I'm not familiar with.
There's some new people. Oh, I'll tell you the other person who's one of my favourites to write with is Peter Wilson, Duke Special.
Yeah.
And I love writing with Peter, and we've written a bunch of stuff together. And he'll either come here, or I've met him the Oh Yeah in Belfast, and we'll write there. It just comes really easily when you're with someone, especially if you've only got a couple of hours together.
And do you kind of get set up with these people, or initially, or do you seek them out, or do they seek you out and send you demos?
No, it tends to happen very naturally. With one of the people I mentioned, Anne Tyler, she came on one of my workshops online during COVID, and this is why I do it really. So she was quite sort of unsure of herself, but I thought there's something that you're doing that's really good. And then I worked with her, we wrote together, we ended up making an album, and the first single just got sent to radio last week. It's getting played loads, and she's got a record deal. And that's why I do it, because it's so exciting to sort of see someone and go, I think you're doing something great here, let me help you. So that's why I do all the work.
So generous.
Well, it is, except it isn't, because I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's the best gift is the ones you give other people, and you get something out of it yourself. All
my friends, like you talked about Gary Clark, Eddie, all my friends are singers or singer-songwriters. And if there's sort of opportunities to make new connections, so Vlado in Bratislava, he's getting married next month, and me and my wife are going to fly over and watch him get married. And that's all happened because I make up songs. It's lovely. That's why I do it.
And in the band, like say with John and Eddie, and there's a lot of writers in the band. When it comes to an album, do you say, Eddie, here's my songs? And
not really. She asked me to do that once, and I did, and I wrote her loads of songs, and I don't think she ever took them out of the jiffy bag, which is fine. I'm not complaining. They just happen naturally. They just sort of, it's always so organic. It's really fine. Obviously, she lives with John, and there's a few more John songs of late, but that's just great. The whole thing about Eddie, and the whole thing with Eddie, is it's whatever happens, and that's the joy of it. It really is. I don't know if you saw us. It really does feel like a family. We all look out for each other. So there's no, but you got 2 songs on that one, and I only got one. That never surfaces. There's no ego like that. We feel that we're there to serve her in terms of the show she wants to put on, and it's a really nice feeling, because I've been in bands when you're younger and it's all competitive. There genuinely is no competition. If John comes in with a brilliant song and we start playing it, we're all like, great, we've got a good new song, or vice versa if I do it.
I was thinking Understudy feels like a more personal journey. When I could describe the album to Ken as, it feels like a warm hug. That's how it feels.
Well, that's nice, and it kind of was the genesis of those songs, even though it goes off piece a little bit, was during that time. My dad was in a care home, and I could speak to him like this, but I couldn't see him. And a lot of the songs grew out of conversations or situations, thinking about him. It's all about him, or reflections of him, even if it goes, like say, off piece a bit, but he was there in the middle of it. So it really was. That's lovely that you feel that. Now, I'm sure if you listen to the lyrics, it'd be hard for you to make a connection, but he was in my mind when I was writing it, So.
I thought there was just this underlying theme of compassion and empathy for yourself and for other people, whether it was your father. I had read that he passed away during COVID, and so sorry for your loss. And
but he was. We were able, because he was, even though he was pretty old, is that he was always really good with technology. So we were never felt that I was, because I live in Glasgow and he was down in Cambridge. So, but it never felt that we weren't in contact. We'd speak 4 or 5 times a day. It was kind of beautiful, and I spent a lot of time asking him about things he'd done when he was younger, which you when you're growing up, you forget your parents have had lives. So it was, we had lots of brilliant conversations, and he's a really fantastic musician who never did anything with it. So we talked a lot about music as well.
And you dedicated the album to him?
Yes. Yeah, I did. And it was, so he was, every time I sat down to write something, he was in my mind, even if the subject matter went away from that a bit. I was able to let him hear some of it and he liked it. And that was a big deal to me because he's he was a music connoisseur, for want of a better word, so.
I suppose one of the most obvious songs is Why I Bring You Flowers.
Yes, that's totally about visiting people in hospitals. And that started in an interesting way in that one of my favorite songwriters that I've ever met and worked with is an American woman called Kim Ritchie. And she said, I want to write a really romantic song. And that's not something I normally do, but we did. We wrote this really romantic song and that's the melody. And then I just said to her, listen, there's something else I think I want to say. And I just take what we've done and make it into something new. But it was great writing with her because she, I don't know, with her help, I think the music's very, it's better for having written it with her. And just when we were playing it in Denmark just now, Chris playing it with me, he came up with a beautiful arrangement for it. And it's become one of my favorite songs I've ever had a part of,
We might sit in silence, listen to the traffic hum. No one tells you how to be, still I know that I should come. Is it enough to watch the movement of the sun? Why I bring you flowers?
Can you tell us about Magnets, which I think is a fantastic
So
song.
Magnets is kind of a joke in that they're all things that I've seen on people's fridge magnets. But it's not actually a joke. It's kind of like at the end it says that, when the person you're meant to be with, actually they're the magnet, not the things on the fridge.
Love that you've said that because Ken and I have been almost we've been in a serious debate about magnets for a bit because I loved the way you took all these well-known phrases and kind of interwove them together to create something unique and something fresh from things that we're used to hearing all the time.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. I thought it was just so innovative and it was so clever. And as I was listening, I was like, that is so, so clever.
Oh, thank you. It's just meant to be, for my missus or whatever. It's like, we're the magnets, not all the other things, So, yeah. And it was the last thing I'd written, and it's at the beginning because the guy who puts my records out said, you got to put that one first. So.
I agree with him. I thought it was the perfect song to start the album.
Yeah, I like it sonically as well because it's very
beautiful vocal on it.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted it to feel like you're in the room, right? And then it goes off on little adventures and stuff like that.
Age is just a number, you're beautiful inside. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. But that's not who I wanna be. To dance like no one else can see. Or take my frown, turn it upside down. Don't have to be mad at the rest. It can't help but make me blue when they talk to me like magnets do.
What Eva said there about the common phrases, I actually missed that, so I took everything at face value. And when we were discussing, Eva was like, "Oh, it's made up of all these kind of cliches and things like that."
Well done, well done.
And I was like, "No, it's not."
It totally is.
I felt kind of duped. I was like,
yeah.
But I think that's testament to how good it is.
It still got me,
that people didn't realize.
That's probably my favorite song on the album. It's just fantastic.
Even though it's sort of almost like a joke, it ends up being something else, you know.
But aren't you saying in the song too, even if all these kind of cliches, there's an element of truth to them?
Yeah, but I'm a big fan of fridge magnets. Our fridge has got millions of them on, so I'm not dissing fridge magnets. I'm just sort of saying it's human beings who draw each other to each other. That's all I'm saying.
It's a sign my mother has up over her door. Don't take life too seriously. No one's getting out alive.
But they're good. Yes, they do have truth in them. So it's not a mocking song at all.
No.
Not at all. And all of them are true. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Oh, it's true.
Yeah, it is.
You don't have to be. I didn't put any things like you don't have to be mad to work here. Or
But the way you twisted that kind of line afterwards, you know, to dance like no one else can see. I just thought, oh my God, he just put a little twist on it there and it's completely fresh and new. Anyway, I'm a big fan of that.
Thank you.
40 is the new black is a good one.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a good line. That's a really good line. Can we talk about our other songs and Understudy?
I really liked Men Without a War.
That was my wife's idea.
Oh.
She saw some boys sort of bashing around outside and she said, oh, look at them, they're men without a war. And I thought, oh, can I have that?
Mm-hmm.
So I took her idea and ran with it.
But it's very Beatles-ish, isn't it? Might say more McCartney than Beatles-ish.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe it's all to do with bizarre, like pushing descending bass lines as far as you can. But the thrust of it is that.
But it's anthemic and it has that kind of George Harrison slide guitar solo on it, and it has a kind of Beatles
strings, everything.
Yeah.
I went mad with that. But it's also at the core of it is saying men struggle with their manness.
Yeah. I felt that was one of the reasons when I listened to that song. I was like, it's kind of like it might be a strange time for men, for a lot of men.
Yes, yes.
We've wars and COVID, and we're surrounded by social media, and it's a lot like there's a lot going on, and I felt the compassion in the lyrics. I felt the compassion or the empathy for young men and kind of what the struggles they're maybe going through now, or the confusion.
Yes, totally. But it's her phrase, and
it's a great one.
So I had to give her a credit on that.
I saw that. I think that all right.
She was very pleased.
And we're all the same. And we're all the same. And we're all the same. Men without a war. And we're all the same. And we're all the same.
We were wondering, was it geared at any kind of political aspect?
Well, at the time I wrote it, the awfulness hadn't happened, and I don't know. It's not. It's more to do with how groups of men potentially behave. Like with a sort of getting drunk and smashing things up and stuff. There's a sort of it was just it's not a judgment or anything. It's just saying acknowledging that happens and it exists. And I think when it gets to the chorus and says we're all the same, it sounds a bit sad, and I put the changes that are sad, even though it's anthemic, and the changes in the verse are quite up. So I just wanted to reflect that in the music. But yeah, basically musically it's how many descending bass lines can I get into one song? And I think I broke the world record. So.
But it's probably one of your biggest sounding songs.
Yeah, it was really good fun. And the other person who was involved was Vlado, who I've just mentioned from Bratislava. He came up with that fantastic, really grandiose bit that happens after the chorus. He's really good. He's so talented.
Was that the string section, is it?
Just the writing. The strings was a lovely woman called Shona Aitken, who's one of the most genius people I've I've met. She's a fantastic string arranger, violin player, she's a famous jazz singer, has her own program on Radio 3. So she's very hard to get hold of because I don't think she sleeps even, you know. So.
She's so busy.
Shona's not done any stuff for Eddi yet, though I've been telling her that she should really consider working with her, because it was a real joy making this record, because everyone was really sort of good about helping me and doing things as efficiently as they could. So it's always important to me that I pay people properly, but everyone rewarded my faith in them by working really hard. So I have a room with Chris Drever and a couple of other people that is a studio that used to belong to a friend of mine, and then before then belonged to Blue Nile, and before that belonged to Teenage Fan Club. And it's a room that I've loved for many, many years, and between four of us we've taken it over. It's just a writing room, really. There's not much in the way of gear in there. There used to be, but we like having a writing room. And Shona came with her quartet, and we recorded the strings in that room. And that was a very special, emotional afternoon, you know, because it was just so lovely. Like, everyone's like, this is going to be great. And everyone was sort of on my side. It was a lovely feeling. You know.
Can I ask you about Someone Else's Blues?
Someone Else's Blues, which is probably my favourite song to play off it. And I really love playing that. That came from a funny place, is that I had written a song for a friend of mine for an organisation called The Great Divide, which was he has a thing where he's trying to get computers for people in Scotland, young people, if they don't have them and they can't afford them. And he's done this in Africa. That's what he does. He takes old laptops out to sort of poorer places in Africa and stuff. And he said, well, why am I not doing this here? So I wrote this song for him and I sent it to my manager, and I was so pleased with myself. And then he went, I don't like it. And I was like, what? He said, right, okay, I'm going to write a really good song then. So I wrote Someone Else's Blues in a fit of pique. I wrote that in an hour and sent it back to him, and then just to prove that I hadn't lost it.
Someone else's blues, someone else's blues, trying to dance in someone else's shoes. Wish that there was something more that I could do, but nothing hurts as much as, can never hurt as much as, nothing hurts as much as someone else's blues.
There's a lovely line in it, today I saw the mirror cry.
Today I saw you make the mirror cry.
It's a lovely turn of phrase in terms of, you know, just see someone standing in front of a mirror.
It's totally about empathy, that song.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's why Ivor was saying earlier about empathy.
I thought about like my kids and
Totally.
you know,
I've got kids as well. It's like, if you have a bad day, that's one thing. If someone you love has a bad day, that's far worse, isn't it?
yeah.
Just the end of the song, there's a horn kind of arrangement. And I was curious because I said there's either one or two things happened. Either you arranged the whole horn section, didn't like it, but then you said, you know what, it's so good, I'm going to have to keep it somewhere, stick it at the end.
That's sort of what happened. There's my friend who I've worked with for many years now, who's called Gustav Lundgren, who lives in Copenhagen, who's a genius and can play any instrument at all. And he did do a horn arrangement for me, and I thought it was in the song. It felt a bit much, but then actually we were listening back to it, and just by accident we'd stuck it on the end, and I went, well, it's so good, let's leave it there. I like it if an accident happens. So the guy who was producing with me was like, oh, is that wise? I don't know. So I don't care, I like it, so it stayed on, you know. And I really do like it when I hear it on the radio. I really like it.
Yeah, happy accidents are fun. Yeah. Like that.
Yeah, and it is a beautiful arrangement. It seems a shame that people wouldn't hear it.
You're so collaborative. It doesn't sound to me, I had a question about, you know, How difficult is it to kind of give up control of something that you've written to hear someone else sing it, whether it be Eddi Reader or Katie Lang or whoever it is singing on the song? I'm thinking now, listening to you, it's not much of an issue at all. But how do you feel about hearing other people sing your stuff?
It's incredible thrill, and I really like it if they do it differently to how I would have done it. It's amazing. You can't break a song. You know, you can sing it in lots of different ways, but if you, for example, if like My Way was done by Frank Sinatra and it was also done by the Sex Pistols, it's the same song. You can't break a song. You can just do a different arrangement. And sometimes people have done arrangements of my songs that are way better than I thought of. So it's a big thrill. I've always been completely flattered and thrilled to hear someone do one of my songs, you know.
And when you're hearing it on TV and film and things like that, that must be thrilling as well. Like
A Working Candle, yeah.
Working Candle, yeah. That's
been used
charmed. It's been used in so many things. That must be, you know, the little song that keeps on trucking away.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, they go off. The good ones go off and have lives of their own that have nothing to do with you, and it's brilliant. It's really good fun.
Blue round the morning moon, the color of your eyes. I remember holding you, a fall through summer skies. You're everything that I've become, in every word I say. I need a bell-bucking candle to keep your ghost away. Hey, hey, hey.
Sometimes quite strange ones. The song that probably has been that I've been involved with in the and it's only in the last year that has probably been heard by more people than any other song I did was I have a friend called Simon Wells, and he came to one of my workshops and he nagged me to go into the studio, and I went in with him for a day. He doesn't sing or play, he just has ideas, really. He don't like and writes lyrics, but often ideas, musical ones, and I wrote a song on that first record, and he's done another record since with my son, who's a writer as well, who also has written stuff with Dee Cullen as well, so he's that sort of thing. And this song is a song about how me would like to be a cat, and I thought, well, I'll sing this, no one will ever hear it, and Simon will be happy. It sort of got picked up as a TikTok thing and has been streamed over 500 million times, me singing about how I want to be a cat.
Did you say 500 million?
Yes.
What? That's crazy.
It's on TikTok. If you put Simon and the Astronauts, I'm just a cat, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of videos, many of them with millions of views of me.
Race to TikTok with me.
Yes.
Going off there now.
So I've done all this time trying to write songs like Magnets and all that stuff, and actually when I'm gone, all I'll be remembered for was wanting to be a cat.
Oh, that is so cool though at the same time, isn't it? Yeah, that's just how the world works these days, I think.
Yeah. Just to let you know, I don't particularly want to be a cat. It was just it was just a favour for Simon, you know.
I'm just a cat that likes to have fun. Long lazy days I lie in the sun. I'm just a cat as quiet as a mouse. So let me in, open your house. I'm just a cat, let me concur. No need to fight, just stroke my fur. I'm just a cat, I don't play fetch. I'm not a dog, allow me to stretch.
Yeah, well,
that's crazy.
After working out.
One thing I noticed in some of your songs is you do, not every song, but some of your songs, you do this technique of pairing an object with a human quality, like say Magnets with Power of Attraction, Silent Bells, which is kind of saying somebody without love is kind of an empty vessel.
Like a silent bell.
Bell-bucking candles is kind of about getting rid of memories of somebody, and microfilm about memory. So you have this kind of technique of matching objects to emotions.
Well, I'd never thought of it like that. I'm going to have to mix it up a bit, I think. But
Well, I've cherry picked these obviously from your catalog, so it's not in every song, but it's I'd say a lot of songwriters do that. But I just
it's quite a bit metaphorical. Sometimes there's stories like straight ahead story song. It's interesting, like talking today when I was with my pals working with guys in the prison, and you're sort of talking about that. And yes, you can be metaphorical. What's really interesting though is that quite often these guys, and I've done it for about a year now, they'll write things and it'll just say what happened, and they've got some incredible stories. And and I remember when Steve Earle produced my band, and I love his story songs. So I probably do fall in the metaphorical camp, but I have a lot of admiration for people who tell it like it is. I just can't help myself.
I think writers as well who actually just tell the story kind of look to people who are very kind of cryptic, and you have to search for that deeper meaning and really admire that. And, you know, that need a few listens. And I think that's a real skill. And it's nice to hear you saying that the people who are writing, just telling the story, the Ron seal of songs does what it says on the tin.
Yes, but that's someone like Steve Earle. Yes, of course. But all I'm really trying to do, and I've got a tiny number of people, but the fact that I've made up a song in this room a couple of years ago, and then you got it, that's enough for me. You know,
it has a life now.
Yes, and also it sort of made sense to you, you know, and then that's nice, you know, and that really is as a songwriter, that's you kind of like on this little tour, and a couple of times you can feel it when you're doing a gig. If someone it's like a physical feeling when people are getting it, and then people come up to you afterwards and say, "Oh, that really spoke to me," or whatever. That's really good. But they are quite, yes, I do tend to go off into a bit of poetry. I try quite often when I don't do so much, I like it. But that's one of the things I like about that Someone Else's Blues, because I didn't filter myself because I wrote it so quickly, and I quite like some of the unfiltered lines in that, you know. So
yeah. How long is how long does it take you to write a song? I know people who, if it's not working in the first half hour or hour, it's like, I'm not going to do that anymore. Do you finish unfinished songs?
I don't abandon them if they come back and sort of whisper in my ear, and sometimes it can be years, and sometimes it's very quick. But I think that your subconscious is always working away. And there's a story that Brian Wilson wrote, God Only Knows, which is one of the greatest songs ever written, in my opinion, in 7 minutes. But he didn't. It's all the stuff that he'd done before was all leading up to that, and all the thoughts he had and all the. So yes, writing a song quickly is not a virtue in itself, but it does sometimes happen quickly. But when it does, I'm quite aware that it might have been bubbling away behind the scenes for a while, you know.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say something now that behind you on the wall is the album cover of Understudy. It's just I've been looking at your face.
Oh well,
floating head in my car for a number of weeks. I love that picture.
That's not the picture. I'll tell you
what
that
is. It looks like it from here.
It is. What it is, there's a really lovely venue that I play in Winchester, and the wife of the man who owns the venue, every time I go there when I've done a new album, she's done the album cover. She's embroidered it. That's embroidery.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And it's beautiful. Amazing. And I love it. And then I said to him, "Oh, thank her so much for me. She must sort of be doing embroidery all the time." And she says, "No, she only does yours." So that's nice.
That's a compliment. That's so lovely.
So that's me. I'm such a big head that I have a picture of my face embroidered on the wall.
Yeah.
This is I've got all my trophies on the wall there. But it's partly, and my new Ivor Novello there. That's partly encouraged by my wife, because she said, "You should put these up. You should be proud of them." So
I agree. You should put them up. You know, they can be stuck in a box getting dusty.
Yes. That there that's something I really loved. For my birthday, Eddi painted that.
Wow.
He's a fantastic painter. So that's me back there. I don't suppose you can see it that well, but it's a really, really lovely painting.
Cool.
That was my birthday present.
That's gorgeous. Was that for a big birthday?
It was for the
for
big
a
one.
birthday.
I've not got long left, so chop chop.
Well, I heard you feel like you're 25 in real life.
Well, yeah. It's funny, like I was hanging with the guys of today, they're much younger than me, and I forget that I'm older. I don't feel any different because I've done a job my whole life where you don't have to grow up, you know. So.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the name Understudy itself? Is there kind of a meaning behind that, or?
Well, yes, it was a little bit that, and I don't mean this in any negative way, that I've sort of trucked along for a long time and not become particularly well known. I'm very happy, really happy with everything I do, but I felt a bit like an understudy, and if someone else dropped out, that it could be my big time to shine. So I'm having a little dig at myself. So that's all.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on that. And you've another song called Limelight.
It's a similar thing. I'm not sure I like that song anymore. I think it's a bit. I think it's a bit over emotional. I like most of my songs, but I listened to that not long ago and I thought, oh, calm down.
Stand in the limelight. Stand in the limelight. Stand in the light.
I think you kind of veer between classic brill building type songwriter and other types of personal songs as well, like Why You Bring Flowers. Do you see yourself as kind of a brill building type songwriter, or do you look at those guys and kind of admire the craft?
Yeah, I love that. I love the factory element of that because it produced some amazing songs. It's like Motown. They go to work and write, Heard It Through the Grapevine, and then go back home again. I think there's a lot to be said for writing in that way. Something seeps in. It doesn't mean you don't write beautiful, wonderful songs. It's just a bit more organized and wandering around in a field, sort of waiting for inspiration. So I love that element. But
that's songcraft, versus, writing songs from the heart. And
I don't think it's verses though. You can't tell me that Heard It Through the Grapevine isn't one of the most amazing songs. And I think saying craft versus art, for me, that's not the payoff, because you can have something that's really artistic but not very good, or something that's really well crafted but really cold. But a lot of Carole King songs are just fantastic songs, but they were written in a hothouse environment.
I think White Christmas was written, for example, on a summer's afternoon in the Brill Building.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's still a classic song that people emotionally get involved with,
When you get to a situation where you're writing with someone, the situation is not the song. So if I'm, say, with Peter Wilson or something and we've arranged, I'll be there, but what happens in the room is magic, And the thing about those people who did the Brill Building and the people who did Motown is that they were there and magic was happening every day. That's my feeling on it. So sometimes when I say very well crafted songs, and I in a review, it makes it sound like that they're cold, but I promise you they're not. It's just I have an appreciation for how songs are put together. It fascinates me, and actually as you go on, when I first listened to records, they were like an amazing sound, and I didn't know what was what. I remember listening and I lived at my grandmother's, listening with a tiny radio under the bed covers, like people were doing, listening to River Deep Mountain High, and it was, like in Tina Turner, it was the biggest sound I'd ever heard in my life, and I had no idea how it was made. I spent my life kind of accidentally learning how everything was done. Some records that I loved when I was young now sound different because I've learned things. It doesn't lessen, it actually makes you go, oh my God, I knew it was brilliant, but now I can see why, and it makes you even appreciate it even more.
I suppose the classic example is Lennon and McCartney, where Lennon kind of wrote pretty much a lot of personal songs and McCartney wrote well-crafted songs, and I love both of them. you know.
Yes.
I probably veer personally more towards McCartney than Lennon. I love the craft of song, you know.
Well, he's also, his sense of melody is beyond anyone else from that period. Though John Lennon's incredibly influential melodically. His one note melodies with the chords moving around it was fantastic. No one had ever really done that before, and it was just like all things Beatles, it was like this miraculous meeting of opposites attracting. So I do know what you're saying, and I probably sounded a bit like almost defensive there. It's just something I feel really strongly about, that some of my favorite songwriters have been what are called jobbing songwriters, but they've blown me away or moved me or reduced me to tears, you know.
Myself and Eva are songwriters ourselves, and most of my songs tend to be songcraft rather than personal stories about my life.
I think if you're writing songs, if there's a kernel in there, even if no one ever knows about it, if I'm writing with someone, we call it Norwegian Wood, because Norwegian Wood was a true thing. He was disguising something, but he was singing about something that he'd done. And so there's always a kernel in there for me, and that's what makes it work. You know, I think sometimes when I used to write with pop singers a lot, I mean, you'd be spent half a day with them, and then you go, "What's this song about?" And they go, "I don't know." That's fine. Good for them. But I think the people that have sort of slaved me, there's always been this kernel there, and that's really true of Brill Building songs and Motown team songs. There was always something in there that was theirs, but they were just transforming it into something that was universal, that everyone in the world got. And that's an amazing skill. Yeah. And Carole King, amazing. They're all real things about how she felt about growing up and being who she was, and yet she reached everybody. Yeah. So I've got a lot of time for that. I think it's great. Some of my other favorite artists do these really professional, not reaching out records, and they can be beautiful. But the fact that Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, everybody knows that, but you kind of know that somewhere in there that was some little heart. Right.
I'm a big fan of Carole King, and Tapestry is one of my favorite albums of all time. And I just think everything is personal, and I always take things at face value. What are you trying to tell me? And and it's all about what you take out of it anyway as a listener, I think.
It is, but she had an immense ability to make everyone feel that.
Yeah.
And that's a really incredible, special thing. And the Beatles did that in their own way, maybe sonically or excitement-wise. And what's interesting is you hear you hear a lot of my records, obviously, and I'm really, really grateful you do. But I also, I've got an electronica record coming out this year, which I wrote with a woman called Jenny Sturgeon, which is not song form at all.
Went out walking on the longest day, a double landscape broke in your wake. What was up was down, what was down was here.
You know, you talked about having a writing room, you talked about being, 2 years, and you've obviously got your room there, and, being able to kind of sit still for a time after being touring. How did that affect the writing process?
It's very concentrated, quite often, and I've just been on tour, which is wonderful. So many adventures, and I love that, and I love the fun you have doing that, and I love mentoring with people, go do my workshops. I love producing and stuff, but to actually be able to sit all day with one idea doesn't really happen very often. And that was it was quite profound in tandem with what I knew was happening with my old man, so it was this really bittersweet sort of thing. But it was lovely as I could share it with him. I could say, "Oh, what do you think of this one, Dad?" And for the people as fortunate as myself, and I know I was fortunate, it just felt like I've been given this sort of bizarre respite from that, But that's going to probably, to people who had bad times, I really have empathy with that. So I'm just talking about my personal experience,
Absolutely. And in terms of that, I'm really interested to hear about your songwriting workshops. And obviously it must be amazingly rewarding to work. Is a songwriting workshop you're doing in prisons as well. Can you tell us a bit more about
Well,
that?
what I like doing about the first time I did them was because I was asked by some guys from Denmark, actually, and I first did it in Denmark. It's a coincidence. I've just been there, and from that it grew, and then I started doing them for the PRS, and it's over 20 years now, and I do a lot of them in Scotland anyway. Before I moved here, in a beautiful place near Inverness, and for me, the joy is working with people and getting to a place that they tell me they might or not have got there unless I'd help them. So, for example, I don't know if you're aware of Dee Cullen. Do you know him? He had all right. He's from Dublin, and he's been on Late Late Show a few times, and he's brilliant. You've got to check him out. You should interview him.
Absolutely.
He's absolutely fantastic. But he came when he was 17. He came on one of my things, and I ended up producing one of his records and writing quite a lot of the second one.
Save me tonight. Oh, it's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright.
He's up for Hot Press Baby of the Year and all that sort of stuff. And he's somebody who's come on one of my courses. The album I've got coming out with Jenny Sturgeon, she came on one of them. And there are other people who've just gone on and done an open mic, and they've never done that before. But just to have a little part in someone's journey. And when we learn a lot of stuff doing this, and partly I feel it's quite good to pass stuff on so they don't have to go through the trial and error process that I did or some of my friends did. And also I let them know about some technical things about getting records out, because it's everyone thinks it's dead mysterious, but it doesn't have to be, So I just like sharing. I don't see why not. And
but you meet up in you kind of have a retreat almost.
There is a place that I like to use, which is the one I'm doing next week is in a place called Noida, which is this is not mine. I'm being asked to do it. It's a very remote part of Scotland. It's on the mainland, but it's so remote there are no roads, so you have to get a ferry. It's very beautiful. I'm doing that next, but the place I normally do it is a place called Monarch Moor, which is called Scotland's Creative Writing Centre, and it's sort of people go and write novels there or do poetry. And over the last 10 years or so, I've become part of their program, and I go up there and it's like heaven. And you go up there with 12, 13, 14 people, and you just spend a week and writing songs, and I just sort of take them through some of the things that I've noticed. It's not a teaching thing. It's like, that's great, that song, but do you know what? If you move that verse to there, would that feel different? And it seems to really make a difference to people. And so that's kind of it.
You wrote a song, What Have They Done for Tomorrow?
That was just to sort of reflect. It's like when it seemed like our future was being taken away from us by lots of malign forces around us. It's like, and thinking about my kids and what's their life going to be like. So it seems a very different world from when I was younger, when everything seemed to be getting incrementally better all the time. And then to realize that actually it can go the other way.
What have they done with tomorrow? What have they done to the years ahead? So much talking, on and on, till the end of the rainbow's gone.
There was a guy that I produced a record of who was a bit older, and he came to one of my weekend workshops and he was playing, and it was absolutely fantastic. And he had a heart transplant. So as the first person I'd met who'd had a heart transplant, he said he wanted to make a record with for the hospital that had done that for him to sell to see if they could raise some money for it. He's just brilliant. Producing involved turning a tape machine on and recording him. There was nothing else, and he was fantastic. And I told some of my industry friends about it, and they were like, "This is amazing," and they loved the record. And he was asked to go on breakfast TV and all that sort of stuff, and he just went, "No, not for me." I sort of admired him for that.
I think some people want to take, like, they can write, but they don't necessarily want to be in the limelight either. No, but
it was a very honest reaction from a man who's had a second go, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I didn't. It's like I had to respect him, because most of us would be going, breakfast television, you say, so it's like, oh yeah, that, and just take every opportunity we get. So I don't. Sometimes when people do walk away from it, it's kind of interesting and a little bit life affirming, strangely,
Yeah.
So.
You've been called like one of the Britain's most consistently
One of
the by
Coleman
and the Independent on Sunday. That's abundantly clear to me that's one of the truest thing I've heard in recent times. That's a big statement. How does that feel? Like, because you've such a fantastic back catalogue of songs, worked in loads of different mediums, so proficient, like producing, playing, or whatever. Do you sleep?
Yeah, I do. I'm quite a lazy human being.
Are you?
Ever since, especially my first child came along, I thought, well, if we're going to do this, I have to make sure they're okay. It's not a hobby. And this is not meant to sound pretentious, but when I go and do a solo gig, I feel a bit like a tradesman or something, and I turn up with my tools and I do my work and I love it, and people turn up and like it, and then I leave. So it does that to me gives me more satisfaction than anything, and that's how I approach it. I just feel very lucky that I managed to get through by doing something that I like doing.
What do you think it takes to be like a working songwriter and not to have it as the side job, the side gig, that it is the gig?
A lot of us don't think we could have done anything else particularly well. A lot of people who are fantastic, we sort of think, if I hadn't done this, I've no idea what I'd have done. I can't imagine it'd be tremendous things. But a lot of my friends who are amazing performers and are really driven writers and stuff, it's what they're kind of good at, And when I meet a lot of people who come on my courses saying, I wish I'd done what you've done. But you don't get any inherent security doing this, which is fine. That's the gig. But you also think, well, you didn't do this, did you? So that's fine that you didn't. But we all go on different journeys. But most of us who do it, we'd be pretty useless at doing anything else. I'll tell you
that. You've done some fantastic songs with Eddi Reader. And the list goes on, but I actually narrowed it down to my favorites. So we have there's Silent Bells.
Well, Silent Bells was, yes, that idea of without love, we're silent bells. I think I also wanted to give something joyful to sing, because it's a really joyful sound when we play it.
There's a truth that is lost in the noise life compels, that all that we are without love are silent bells.
April Blues, I think, is a great song.
Oh, wow, I'm glad you like that one. I really like trying to write jazz standards. If I'm relaxing, that's what I like to do. And I just really like studying old chord charts and looking at all the little beautiful movements that you don't hear in music anymore. So that was kind of written just to please myself, and then I took it to her and she liked it.
they can be so cruel. Those old April blues.
Then there's Footsteps Fall.
Oh, that's good. So in Denmark, I met the woman that I wrote it with, Annette Bjergsfeldt, who over 20 years ago, I was in Denmark and said that there's this woman who has records out she'd like to write with you. And she was late. She turned up late and she said, I'm really sorry I'm late, but I overslept because the couple next door were making love so noisily all night I didn't get any sleep. And that's where that song came from. And I saw her. She came to the gig. I hadn't seen her for 22 years. And she's now a successful author in Denmark. And it was brilliant to see her. Well, that's why I do it, because I just made this connection again. But that's where that song came from.
And the loneliest sound of all is the sound of love through a stranger's wall. And when their laughter fades, when there are no more words, the silence breaks me most of all.
The other song that I had is Joke, which I love.
Well, Joke was the very first song that I wrote or started that I thought was any good. And I was about 19 and it took 9 years to finish. But I remember I was still living at home when I was playing that and I would play the riff and drive my dad mad. But I really like that. Whenever I play it, I can remember driving my old man mad.
It sounds like a song where you start with the title and then, try and write the song around it. Yeah?
It started with a riff, which is missing, which is actually ended up being missing from the song. And then I used the riff again in a song called Weatherman years later, which is about my son. And so I wrote the song from around a riff and then took the riff out, which was, and I always thought, well, that's a shame. That was good. So I used it again years later.
Do you hear the one about the one you're now without? Did it make you smile? Do you hear the one about the one you filled with doubt? Was it worth your while? The way you kick a life around, deserving to be underground. What does this explain? Joke? Is it some kind of joke? I'm laughing, I'm laughing, I'm laughing, I'm laughing. Do you hear the one about the one who fell from space?
The other ones I have are Muddy Water.
That's kind of about the beginning of my relationship with my wife. When I met my wife, she lived in Australia and I lived here, and it was quite difficult.
Yeah, I love the line, and the CCTV camera never caught us. It's just...
Yeah. That's an example of trying not to be poetic. Sometimes I just want to say, I could have said, but they never found us. So I thought, well, what would actually happen that it didn't happen, but what would be a good way of saying it that isn't poetic? So I quite like not being poetic sometimes. Yeah.
It was lovely to see something kind of domestic and something that's not very romantic kind of used in a song, like a, traffic cone or, something that's pedestrian,
Yeah, I think those things can be more evocative than being poetic all the way through, definitely.
Yeah, it's such a memorable line because, I haven't heard it in a song before since.
It is fun to sing as well because it's got all those syllables.
Did not do what I should. I nearly lost it good, but the CCTV camera never caught her. All that time in the muddy water. Hey.
The Girl Who Fell in Love with the Moon.
That was written in Denmark with my friend Jakob Eriksson, who is the lovely, lovely man who It's amazing how much Danish stuff here, but he's died, unfortunately, died quite young. He spoke better English than anyone else I've ever known in my life. And he would quite often be speaking to me and use words, and I'd think, I don't know what that word is. It was his second language, you know. He was a fantastic guy and a fantastic songwriter. So I went over to write songs with him, and we wrote a bunch of songs, which I don't remember any of them, but I had 5 minutes before we had to finish. And in fact, it was finished, some of the lines, as I was walking out the room. It was written very, very quickly at the end of a long sort of writing session. And I just said, can we write a song that feels like a fairy tale that's always existed? And he understood what I meant right away. I really like the line in that one, now she's adrift on a sea of tranquility. I guess we were punching the air when we thought of that.
The girl who fell in love with the moon, she tried to say no, but the pull was too strong. There was a time when her mood used to change with the tides. Now she's adrift on a sea of tranquility. She doesn't care and nobody asks why. The girl who fell in love with the moon, she'd been so lonely for so long.
So that was probably his line, because he knows words or knew words. He was a lovely man. He then got Eddie involved in a film that my kids used to love called Help, I'm a Fish. Now you won't remember that, but it was really big around the time my kids were young, and it was really nice. Taken to the cinema, and the film started, and they heard this voice singing, and they looked at me and went, "Is that Auntie Eddie?" And it was.
Prodigal daughter.
Sometimes Eddie would set me homework, and she would say, what about someone who leaves and comes back but is as a woman, not a guy? Because most of the songs are about, green grass of home, or all of those songs about men coming back. So what about if there's one about a woman coming back? And that was homework.
It's a great title.
Yeah. It was. And a little bit about herself. She is an actress. She's a wonderful performer. She's an incredible interpreter, and she has to believe what she's singing. And sometimes in the past, I've given her a song and she's liked it, but I know there's a line in it where I've just put a line in, and it sounds good. There's nothing wrong with it.
So she roots out the untruth.
She roots it out. She goes, "What's that doing there?" Yeah. And it's a perfectly good line, but she knows I haven't quite pulled it off. She's a genius at that. Absolutely. It blew my mind the first time she did that. So how did you know that was the line I didn't try on? She was right, and the change I made improved it, and that continues to happen to this day.
And the last one is Dragonflies.
Dragonflies has been an amazing song for me in terms of interaction, I guess. It is about how brief our time is here. My wife has a tattoo of a dragonfly there. Bass player Kevin in Eddie's band has one there. Jill Jackson, that I've worked with and produced a couple of records, has a whole sleeve of them. I've met about 8 or 9 people where it's really meant a lot to them. And people, Jill had it played at her grandmother's funeral, and it's amazing. You just have this thought, but it has in it probably, I think, my best ever line. In fact, Audrey, my wife, is going to have it tattooed on herself at some point. Which is the line, "Each of us know in our hearts we must go, and that's what beauty is." I think that's the best line I ever wrote. So the fact that other people like it sounds a bit big-headed, doesn't it? But I couldn't quite believe it when I looked down at the page and it was there. I was like, where did that come from? Because it's true. We're all toast, but the brilliance of being here is what life is, you know.
A lost summer's day, a lifetime away. What do you find? A slow turning sun and somewhere to run are on your mind. Not the flash that you saw and was gone in the wink of an eye. As soon as we're here, we disappear like dragonflies.
People who are listening specifically for songwriting, what's the best bit of advice you could give to them?
Right. Teach yourself the mechanics, but don't be afraid to ignore them, you know? And this includes like Dylan or whatever, or Lou Reed. They kind of knew how to put together a song, and then they made magic by breaking the rules, but they knew the rules to break them. And the other thing is, don't get in the way of yourself. Don't second guess. It's like, I see this so many times. They'll sing a line and go, oh, should it be this? Or, oh, should it be that? It's just trust yourself that normally the first thing that pops out of your head, if it's not a cliche or whatever, is the one. And just don't get in the way of yourself. Don't be afraid to just blur it out there. And then there's rewrites, but you won't have rewrites unless you've sort of got something on the page.
Right.
So
Yeah.
learn the bits and bobs and don't get in the way of yourself. Those are probably the two things.
Are you surprised? Oh, this song is really, really good, and someone goes for the one that you didn't think was as
Yeah, you'd think
good.
by now I'd know which ones are any cop.
Yeah.
I've several times in the past been convinced by something and put tons of effort into making it come into existence, and it's not flown, and yet something that I barely noticed did. Well, I think that's true of all of us. So it's very hard to know your own work.
Yeah.
My last question is Chris Difford.
Well, I've written with him the fourth record we're going to make. We made a musical together that no one ever heard, which was the hardest thing I ever had to do in terms of putting together a project. And I feel so amazed that I know him. But basically the way we work is he gives me words and I turn them into music. So
Similar to what he does with Glenn Tillibrook, I suppose.
with Glenn, yeah. And we've toured and become... I'm just really glad I know him because he's from a different world and we have so much fun together. And I really enjoy touring with him because it's just strange and fun. Like, we're playing strange places and who knows what's happening next.
I have his book, actually. It's a good read.
It is a good read. And we've done it before. We're going to do an Edinburgh show this year, which is so much fun, which is like where we talk a lot, play some songs, but it's really nice. It's not like anything else I do. And I really like Chris.
Yeah, he's been through a lot too, hasn't he, over the years? And
Nothing like I've been through.
It was actually just really fantastic to talk to you about. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming on the podcast.
I've really
it's
enjoyed
such a pleasure.
I've enjoyed it.
thank you very much for talking to us.
We'll see you again when we come over, won't we?
So, Ken, what did you think of the interview today with Boo?
What was very interesting about Boo is, first of all, the amount of work he does. I mean, he seems to constantly be working on new projects, working with new people and exploring different genres and just getting out there and doing the work and meeting new people constantly. And he never stops.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's great for collaboration. He's great for taking risks with young new talent and recognizing talent. I think one of my favorite things that he kind of mentioned about his songwriting process actually was how the subconscious is working away on the songs the whole time.
You can see in the interview, he talks about working with people who are accomplished songwriters, but also working with people who attended his course or people that he met at songwriting retreats. And I think if somebody has got good ideas, they don't necessarily have to have a name or be highly accomplished or to be a released artist for him to see value in somebody's ideas.
He's there for the talent.
He's there for the talent and he's panning for gold all the time, trying to find the little nuggets. And he finds them in people that mightn't necessarily be songwriters per se, or musicians, or just people who have an interest in writing songs but mightn't play an instrument, for example. And he's kind of written with lots of different people like that. And it's great to see him doing that. And he's got some brilliant songs out of that as well.
I love his voice. I think Understudy now is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's up there for me, and I don't say that lightly. I also thought one of the nice things he kind of talked about as well when we asked him about, hearing other people sing his songs, was that you can't break a song. What a quote. You can't break a song, and that different arrangements bring something different to the song, and he loves hearing it, and that was just so lovely to me.
He takes what he does seriously, obviously, but he doesn't take himself too seriously. There's some songs there that I might have missed out first time, and they're a part of my life now. They're going to be songs I'll be constantly listening to.
I feel like that as well. I feel like Boo Hewerdine is just going to be someone I'm going to be forever listening to.